To make the location algorithm, I use LocationIQ's API. It's an affordable API, and you can make a free account. And I believe the limit is 5,000 requests a day for that. So over here in the documentation, there's a lot of stuff, as you can see. For today's video, we're going to be using the forward geocoding and the matrix APIs. I'm going to pop on over to VS Code here, and we have some models here. So the first one I'm going to show you is the service provider. So there's two types of accounts in this application, a service provider account and a customer account. So the service provider has a bunch of fields here, but the ones that we're going to be looking at are the address fields and the longitude and latitude fields. If you scroll down here, you see the home model, which has those same fields, longitude, latitude, and address information. When a customer creates an account, they have an ability to make a home, and they can have one or many homes. Of course, the address information and coordinates are going to be different for each one of those. I'm going to pop on over to my signals document here. Signals is really cool, Django signals, because it essentially kind of listens for events. So for these two, I have it set up to listen for the creation of a home instance and a service provider instance. So once those are created, Django signals sees that happens, and it takes the address information and it converts that address information to longitude and latitude. So you can see that happens by this geocode address function. So I'm going to pop on over to my utils document here and show that to you. We have a URL here, which is the LocationIQ website. And we have some parameters we're passing in, the API key, the address information, and the format here, which is JSON. So I'm going to scroll down here to the next function. This function is a basic filtering function. I have plans to make it a little bit more elegant, but for now, what it's doing is it's filtering by a rating. So if the service provider has less than 3 stars, they'll be excluded from the search. Later on down the line, I'd like to implement this filtering based on allergies. So every customer and service provider has an allergies field. So for this algorithm, if the service provider is allergic to something that exists in the home, then they'll be filtered out based on this function. So I'm going to scroll down here to the get nearby providers function, and this is the location function. At the top here, we have the customer home variable. And as you can see, we're passing in a parameter here in the function called home ID. And the customer home variable is going to be the home instance based on that home ID. Down here, we have customer coordinates, and that is going to be the longitude and latitude of that home. As you can see here, I have a logger debug message, and you'll notice that they're kind of littered throughout the entire algorithm. And this was really helpful in the process of creating this algorithm because I was able to see exactly what information was being created and returned throughout the process of the algorithm. I've got the provider coordinates here, and that's going to be the same setup with that longitude and latitude. But the difference here is there's a for loop, and it's saying for provider and eligible providers. So if you look at the top here, I'm passing in a parameter, eligible providers, and that is a function. That's that function I just walked you through here based on filtering. So essentially what this is saying is if you're eligible, then you're going to be included in provider coordinates. So here we have a variable called all coordinates, and this is joining the customer house coordinates and the provider coordinates in preparation to send it to the matrix API. Here we have variables called sources, indices, and destination index. So the first index, which is 0, is going to be the customer's home, which is the destination. The subsequent indices will be the providers. Here we're preparing for a request, so we're defining a URL. So as you can see, we're going to the matrix driving API, and we're passing in the joined coordinates that we created. The parameters function here passes in a key, the API key, the sources, which are the service providers, and the destination, which is the customer home. As you can see here, there's something called annotations distance. So that's important because when you're using this API, you can do either distance of a drive, duration of a drive, or both. So if you live in a busy city and you need real-time data, using both would be appropriate because you could return a distance and a driving duration, and you could compare the two and give the better one. So we've got a try except down here. So we're making a request to the URL with the parameters that we pass in up here. And we're turning the response into a JSON format and housing all that data in response_data. So down here in the response data, we are getting the distances and housing that in a variable called distances_data. So I'm going to scroll on down here to proximity info. Proximity info is a variable which is a list, and it's going to show a provider with their name as the value, and the distance with their distance from the home as that value. We're going to sort proximity info based on the distance. So the closest person will be first in the list. And the max results variable here is a parameter I've actually passed into the function. So the max results is only 10. So we're only going to be returning 10 service providers. Down here, we're serializing the data. And these are all the fields from the service provider model. And you can see that we've tacked on distance here. So down here, my server is running, so I'm going to click on that. And here's the homepage of the API. It's just a very basic HTML web page. As you can see, I've built custom paths for everything in the API. You don't need to do this. You can use something called default router, which is very useful, and it's super fast for setting up endpoints for all your basic CRUD operations. So the first thing I'm going to show you is the service providers. So you can see here we have a list of service providers, and you'll note that all of them are in the Washington, D.C. area. I'm going to go back to the home page here, and I'm going to show you the list of homes. So here we have a list of homes, and you can see the final two in the list are in DC as well. So for the purposes of this video, we're going to be using the third one, which has a primary key ID of 3. So if we go to nearby providers here, you'll see that at the end of the URL here, it's asking for an integer, and that integer is a primary key. So we're going to pass in 3. We're going to pass that in, and as you can see, a list of providers is provided, and it's sorted by distance. So each subsequent provider, their distance from the home increases. So when this is all returned, the customer in the application will see the service provider that's closest to their home first. Thank you so much for watching my video. I really appreciate it. Please comment and react to the video and let me know your thoughts.